Okay, so now we will move on to the first element of information security, and that is confidentiality. Now, confidentiality requires that only authorized users have access to the protected and sensitive data. Confidentiality is nothing but only the people who are intended to access those data should be able to access those data. Any other unauthorized users should not access that data. Now, there are some of the practices employed to address the confidentiality. For example, ensure that there is an authentication process within the organization so that people can authenticate to access a resource or a piece of information. Authentication requires an user with identity and a password, like username and a password, when addressing the confidential data. Now, implement security controls. That is why many companies or many organizations have audits in place to check whether the proper security controls are being employed or not. Then ensure that the access control policies are implemented. Now, this point is very important when it comes to ensuring confidentiality. Access control policies are very important. Access control policies actually define which people have access to what resources. For example, if you are an employee, if you are an associate, you might not have the access to the data which is supposed to be accessed by the upper management. So in this case, there is an access control policy which restricts other users from accessing the data from other people. Now let's have a simple scenario. This is Bob and this is Alice and this is Trudy. From the face you can see that Trudy is a bad guy or is a bad person. Now Bob is trying to send some information to Alice. Bob is trying to send some information to Alice here. Now let's say Bob is trying to tell some information about his meeting, and if Trudy tries to intercept that data and is able to read the data through the medium, then we can say that the confidentiality element is being violated. In this case, people often employ techniques like encryption and decryption and public or private key cryptography in order to restrict anyone from accessing the data. For example, if Bob is trying to send a bank account number, and if that data is then encrypted with a strong encryption algorithm like the AES or the DES, which we are going to see in next sections, and if that data is being sent, then Trudy has no chance of reading that data. Now see, Trudy can intercept and can have the encrypted text, but then there's no point because that data is supposed to be encrypted with a key that only Alice can see that data. So encryption mechanism and hashing is used to avoid the confidentiality. So if Trudy is able to access this data in plain text, then we can say that the data is being violating the confidentiality principle. So basically, confidentiality means to ensure that the information is only accessible to authorized individuals, that is, individuals with a real identity. For example, the personal data of salaried employees must only be accessible by authorized human resources department. Now, there are several types of access control which can ensure the confidentiality information. Encryption is example which I just discussed. It can be used to protect the confidentiality of information. Access control policies, which we have just seen a couple of minutes ago, can be applied at different levels of information security management system. For example, at the physical level, you can have locks on your doors, then filling cabinet that locks or safe vaults, and at the logical level, access controls to information or encryption. So this was all about the first element of information security, that is the confidentiality. In the next lecture, we will see about integrity.